Good evening and welcome to Cult Free Radio. Tonight we have another amazing and interesting guest from the ex-Jehovah's Witness world. But before we get to that interview, I'd like to give you all a little bit of an update on what's going on with Cult Free Radio and the ex-Jehovah's Witness world in my world. First thing you might notice is I have a little bit of a scratchy throat tonight. I think it's just the autumn season. So I've got a cough drop rolling around in my mouth. Hopefully it won't be too disruptive to the proceedings this evening. So that's the first little bit of news that nobody particularly cares about. Hopefully this next bit of news you will care about, because there's an increased focus in the Watchtower in the Jehovah's Witness organization on people who speak languages other than English, including sign language. There was recently an article, and this is a worldwide phenomenon, an article in, I think it was New Zealand, about how the witnesses are going to neighborhoods, tracking down people who are deaf or hard of hearing, and use sign language, and developing their territories. And the way this looks to normal people is they're keeping a database of deaf people, which kind of is creepy and not too cool. So the article was about the complaints that are being lodged about the witnesses, and the witnesses, of course, denying that they keep a database on anybody. But we all know they do. They keep track of everything and everyone that they can. Anyway, relating to the deaf and the hard of hearing is the fact that with all of the cool and informative and helpful and encouraging YouTube videos and Vimeo and other online video services and even shows like Cult Free Radio, their vast majority are in spoken English. Some are in spoken Spanish. Very few are in sign language that are focused on Jehovah's Witnesses and the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And the ones that are in English, very few are subtitled or captioned. And although YouTube provides a little captioning button that supposedly does voice recognition, if you've ever dictated a message to your telephone, say, to type a text or an email, you know about how accurate that can be. And so deaf and hard of hearing people aren't getting access to this vital information that can educate people about the Jehovah's Witness organization. So some friends and I were speaking about this and had the idea, well, hey, why don't we try to organize a way to create captions and subtitles for ex-Jehovah's Witness videos? You know, people who create content, like myself, doing Cult Free Radio, you can do it yourself, but it's extremely tedious work. And in my experience, it takes approximately an hour to do 10 or 15 minutes of video captioning. So 4 to 6 hours to do 1 hour of video, basically. You know, and I'm just talking about English speaking to English captions for the deaf and hard of hearing. If we're talking about translation into another language, like Spanish, that might well take even longer. I haven't done that sort of work. So it's already time-consuming work to make the online content, just to prepare the show, to do a show, to record the show, and to post it up to YouTube, even without captions and subtitles. But if you add on all this, extra time, it really makes it almost impossible to do. But you know the old saying, many hands make the work light. So just this week, we've created a new Facebook group to try to organize video content makers with volunteers. It's brand new, but hopefully it'll get off the ground and we'll get plenty of content makers involved. I'm posting it on the screen here for those who are actually watching. I know some people just listen and aren't looking at a screen. But this group on Facebook is called exJW Video Captioning / Subtitling Group. And what we hope to use is a website called Amara, which is kind of crowdsourcing, where a bunch of people can volunteer and work on captioning videos. And so here's kind of how it works. I know that it sounds sort of nebulous at the moment, but here's how it works. Somebody makes videos, in this case, ex-Jehovah's Witness videos. The video content person, that would be me for Cult Free Radio, or whoever makes a video for YouTube, would go onto amara.org and sign up for a free account. And during the sign up, you're given the opportunity to link that Amara account with your YouTube channel. So you'll want to do that. Then Amara automatically adds a link to YouTube for you, so that in the info section of your YouTube videos, there's a link to your video in Amara where volunteers can go and help add captions and subtitles. Then what you do is you promote the crap out of the fact that you need help and see if you can get volunteers. And volunteers can join Amara for free also and add captions and subtitles to your videos as well. So as a content creator, you may be thinking, I don't want people messing with my videos, but that's not really how it works. Amara takes a copy of your video, and the volunteers, the work they do in Amara, you, the video's owner, see it, approve it when it's done, and those captions or subtitles don't go to YouTube until you click done and submit it. So there's really no concern of anybody messing with your actual YouTube videos or your YouTube channel. The volunteers work in Amara, and you, the video owner, are the go-between between Amara and your channel. Now, if you'd like to be a volunteer and help out, you might think, oh, I don't have that kind of time that you just described. Well, you don't need that kind of time if we get a bunch of volunteers. You know, you can be a Jehovah's Witness publisher with just 15 hours a month now, you know. So you could also volunteer on amara.org with no time commitment at all. And if you want to volunteer, you can sign up for the free account, join the Facebook group where we hope to sort of organize where the needs are and the priorities are, announce what videos need captioned, what's accomplished so far, and so on. And so, like, say a volunteer will want to work for, I don't know, a half an hour on Sunday morning. You know that in that amount of time, you'll be able to add 5 or 6 minutes of captions to a video. So the Facebook group might be able to help you decide which video to work on, what needs help. You can see what's in progress or what's new, because hopefully we'll get plenty of video creators to post in there as well as the volunteers. So if you think about some of the numbers I've just sort of thrown out there so far this evening, in the last few minutes here, like for instance, tonight's show will probably run about an hour and a half. That's 8 to 10 hours of captioning work to transcribe everything. And, you know, that's a daunting prospect for one person doing that. And I think that's why so many YouTube videos aren't captioned. Because, you know, you don't have that kind of time. But, you know, suppose there's 8 to 10 volunteers working on this show, then it's only an hour each. If there are 20 volunteers, you could get the whole show done in a half an hour. So that's also where the Facebook group comes in. You know, you can post something like, I'm going to go work on Cult Free Radio number 15 for a while today, and then you can come back to the thread later and post and say, you know, I got through 23 minutes and 15 seconds of it. Then the next volunteer knows kind of where they'll be starting. Amara keeps track of the timing and stuff too, but if there's good communication in the Facebook group, then things are going to be more organized. So if you have a YouTube channel, and you'd like to make it accessible to deaf and hard of hearing people, please join the Facebook group that I had up on the screen there a minute ago. And I'll post that up there again. And if you don't have a YouTube channel but want to help provide deaf and hard of hearing people access to the ex-Jehovah's Witness YouTube content, please join the Facebook group. On Facebook, you can search for exJW video captioning slash subtitling group. And you can also join www.amara.com. That's .org. My bad. That's a free sign up, amara.org. So there really needs to be a good number of volunteers to make this work. Excuse me. Otherwise, it won't be much different from now. A handful of people working their butts off until, you just can't do it anymore. So, deaf people rely on captions and subtitles to know what people are saying. So if you can help, please help, and everybody would really appreciate it. Now for the part of the show that I think many of us have been waiting for, our interview. And tonight we welcome an amazing woman and mom from Wisconsin. Her name is Angie Radaj. And so without further ado, let's get to Angie's interview. Well, Angie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
The first thing I'd like to start talking about is a little bit of background. For instance, how long you were one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and were you born into the organization and raised in it, or did you convert at a later time when you were older?
My parents converted when I was about a year old. They were studying pretty much right after I was born, so I was pretty much born in and raised in the religion.
Okay. All right. That's sort of similar to me. I was a little bit older. I think I was maybe between 3 and 5 or something like that. So yeah, I was raised in as well. And how old were you when you were baptized?
11.
Wow. Okay, so you were very young. Were
Uh-huh.
you a zealous young witness girl, or did you feel some sort of pressure from your family, maybe, or from other kids in the congregation? How did that work? Why 11? Did you feel you were ready?
Um, it was really all I knew. All of my friends were all in the congregation. I wasn't allowed to associate outside of the congregation. I don't know that I was necessarily zealous at first, but it's just was presented to me as this is all there is. And I had other friends in the congregation who started getting baptized, and everybody was so proud of them and made such a big deal out of it. So it was something I decided, hey, I want to do that too.
All right, and that's
So I didn't know what was involved at all. I just remember going to my parents saying, I want to get baptized. And they were like, okay, great. And took me to the elders and they started asking me questions that I had no idea how to answer. So I had to study and all the questions that they have you go through. And I'm book smart. I was able to read it all and give them the answers they wanted and got baptized.
wow, 11 years old. I, I, I'm kind of torn between "Oh, you poor kid" and I'm kind of proud of you. That's pretty advanced. I mean, I know nowadays you see pictures now and then that witnesses post on Facebook of like really little kids, 8, 9, getting baptized. But it seems like back in my day, or at least where I'm from, and I know witnesses tend to be regional as far as some of these unwritten rules. You almost had to have the word teen at the end of your age before they'd consider you. I think if I went to my elders at 11, they'd have kind of talked me off the ledge and said, you're just not mature enough. You have to wait a few years. But I know that there are areas and there are times and places where, they're dunking kids at whatever age. If you can read and, like you said, memorize, learn the answers to those questions, they'll let you get
Right.
baptized. So,
And this area, it's expected young. If you're not baptized between at least 13 and 15, something's wrong,
hmm,
is the general feel.
okay. So, um, and you mentioned the area. Do you feel like the Midwestern United States is regionally kind of similar for Jehovah's Witnesses? Because I'm originally from the Northeast, and I think the Northeast is very similar. And people talk about the West Coast witnesses and how they have their own sort of culture. Do you feel like sort of there's a Midwest witness culture?
I think so. My association, since I had to stay within the religion, I had friends from Appleton to Janesville to Menasha to my area, and it was very similar, pretty strict environment, I think, compared to some of the more liberal
Hmm.
congregations.
So you were baptized at 11, which means by the time you're in high school and getting ready to graduate high school, you've been baptized a pretty good number of years. Um, were you considering college? Did the people at school try to gear you towards going to college? And what did you end up doing? Did you end up pioneering or marrying elder in the congregation, or how did things go as you got older as a witness?
Um, well, my parents actually pulled me out of school and homeschooled me. I only went through school until my freshman year.
Hmm.
And then it was decided that it would be better for keeping away from bad association and not having the temptations to associate and with others or go to dances, that I would just come home, and I homeschooled and auxiliary pioneered. I Through that process, I ended up graduating a year early because I always was a very good student, but it was very clear that college was not an option for me.
Right. And I
So,
think that that's typical in pretty much most families. I find that occasionally there'll be a family that might have some money, and they might have some sort of clout where they could send one of their kids to school and it doesn't come back and hurt them. But for your average witness family, letting your child go to college, it doesn't reflect well on you as a parent most times. So,
correct. The attitude has changed recently, but back when I was 16, 17, 18, you were pretty much viewed as leaving the religion if you went to college. It was almost as bad as disassociating yourself.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty extreme, especially if you do have to go away to college. I think even now that they're a little more lax on college, it's really on if you live with your parents and you go to the college down the street and you still get your
Correct.
service time and you go to meetings and stuff.
Correct.
They still frown heavily on kids going out and living on their own with other kids.
Exactly.
And I
And
really
my
shouldn't call them
daughter
kids.
is away at college right now, and it was looked down upon for her also to do that. It was more of a, if you planned on pioneering, you could go to a technical school, but anything above 2 years was frowned upon. So for her to be away at a 4 year college is a big step for the family.
Yeah, yeah, and that clearly wouldn't have happened if she was still a witness.
Correct.
So, all right. So you grew up, you got baptized. Um, how long did you remain a witness, and did you leave kind of of your own accord? And by that I mean, did you realize that it was not the truth before you left, or did you leave for other reasons and then later found out more about the organization?
Well, the first time I left, when I turned 18, I still believed it was the truth, but I was struggling with living it. You know, I wasn't
Hmm.
allowed to date. I wasn't allowed to do anything unchaperoned. I pretty much worked, pioneered, took care of my younger sisters, and went to meetings, and that was my life. And I met the man that I eventually married at work, and it turned into a big scandal.
Mm. Worldly
And
guy.
so, yes, and I ended up getting kicked out at 18, and I moved in with my then boyfriend, and we ended up moving across country to New Mexico. And I was disfellowshipped, and I didn't talk to or see my family for 2 years.
Wow. And so you're basically just you and your boyfriend and eventual husband, and no contact with your family back home. Um,
Correct. My mother, even when she kicked me out and I moved in with him, and after I was officially disfellowshipped, left my baby book on my steps outside my house.
wow. So completely cut off as if you were never her child.
Exactly.
Wow. So you said you left twice, so that implies to me that you did go back.
I did go
Did
back.
the shunning? Did the shunning? Was that a draw to go back because you missed your family, or how'd that
um,
work? Go anywhere you want with your going back story.
that's kind of a hard question to answer because
Hmm.
I still believed it was the truth. I
Right.
just wasn't living the life. And
So you had the
I
guilt too.
eventually got married, and then I got pregnant with my oldest daughter, Brianna, and I felt like I had to save her.
Hmm.
So I went back for her. Um, I did miss my family, and I wanted them to be part of my daughter's life. But I wouldn't say the shunning drew me back. That was kind of holding me back. I was angry
Hmm.
and didn't I never viewed it as a loving thing to do.
Yeah.
If it
Emotional
wasn't for
blackmail.
the fact that I thought that God was really there, I never would have gone back.
Okay.
So I did get reinstated when I was like 7 months pregnant with my daughter. And it was a very odd experience because the minute I was reinstated, my family acted like nothing had happened. You know, they wanted to start over like this 2 years of my life had never happened. And that was very hard to accept friends and family back as genuine
Hmm.
when they were capable of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. If they can cut you off completely once, who's to say that they can? I mean, they can cut you off anytime then.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
that the love is conditional. But and speaking of the love, I think that's a good point you made about because you were a believer at the time, you went back because you loved your daughter
Yes.
and you wanted her to survive Armageddon. And so let me ask sort of a logistical question here. You're still in New Mexico at this time?
No, after I was reinstated, when about a year later, I did move back to Wisconsin to be by my family.
Right. So you were reinstated in a different congregation than the one that disfellowshipped you, though.
Yes.
Okay. I I wonder if that's easier or harder. Um,
It was an interesting experience because they didn't know me at all.
mhm.
And I just started attending meetings, and I had to write my letter saying all my reasons about why I was repented and wanted to be reinstated. And they met with me and then gave their recommendations back to my home congregation. And I was actually reinstated very quickly because my the elders at my home congregation knew me since I grew up, and their saying was that they knew that I was always a very honest and forthright person, and I always answered their questions truthfully. So if I say I'm repentant, and they reinstated me,
Okay.
which the New Mexico congregation found very odd.
Hmm.
And so they placed extra restrictions on me just until they could kind of get to know me better, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Because I often wonder if it's easier to get back in. Not that I would ever want to, but in a congregation where the elders don't really know you as opposed to where they do really know you. And I guess like in your experience, it sort of depends on how well they know you and what they thought of you when they did know you.
Hmm.
Kind of how the disfellowshipping went in the first place. If you were kind of belligerent at your judicial committee, they might be less reluctant to take you back compared to a foreign
I,
congregation that doesn't know you, but you were on good terms with them for your whole life. So that helped you get back. You got back quickly, and then you moved back, and so you're all a big happy Jehovah's Witness family.
Mhm.
But you're not a witness anymore. So then what happened?
Well, I was in for a very long time, but I ended up going through a divorce. My husband did end up converting to be a Jehovah's Witness, but I think it was more of to keep the family together, and he just felt like it was a good way to raise the kids. Didn't really know what he was getting himself into. So he was never the good example in the congregation. And there was quite a few years even where I was going by myself with three kids.
Hmm.
Eventually, he ended up getting disfellowshipped, and I got divorced. And it just felt like this whole support system that was supposed to be there for me disappeared. And suddenly, we were not good association anymore, even though, it was nothing that I had done, it was nothing that my children had done, but suddenly we were looked down upon. And my kids were treated differently. We weren't invited to go to places. So it just got really hard. And it makes you question everything when you thought you were part of this family and suddenly everything starts falling apart.
Yeah.
And especially for Bree, she was a young teenager. She was, a pretty girl. And all the things that were happening to me at a younger age were starting to happen to her, where she was starting to be labeled as bad association and constantly being counseled for the way she dressed. And if she talked to a boy, she was being dragged into the elders' room to be lectured because she texted a boy. Um, the final straw for me is we had a couple of elders come over to our house to have a shepherding call with us. So I'm thinking this is going to be an upbuilding, encouraging meeting. And it turned into them accusing my daughter of trying to get a teenage boy to masturbate because she sent out a picture of herself and a friend in a bikini at the beach.
Hmm.
And she's sitting at the table, her face is just turning red. And they're basically making her say to them that this was her intention or why it was wrong and what were these boys thinking and what was she trying to do. And I was just getting angrier and angrier because this is ridiculous for two grown men to be ambushing a 13-year-old girl and making her feel like she did something wrong sending a picture to a friend.
Yeah, especially not clearing that with the parents first. I mean,
Yes,
so you were ambushed as well, and
that
Bree's
that
dad.
was that was a very, very difficult thing for me too, because once my husband was disfellowshipped and we were divorced, I felt extremely disrespected because there was no respect for my authority as a parent or as a spiritual head. They would just go right over me and go straight to my kids.
Hmm.
And that doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
So after that meeting, after they left, I just looked at my daughter and was like, "Don't listen to a word they said. That was horrible. That none of that was right." I'm your parent. I'm the one who gets to decide what you were wearing. And she was just this child. She was this innocent child that it just never occurred to her that a boy might do anything
Yeah.
like that to her picture. So it was just an awful experience. So after that, we just stopped attending meetings. We stopped just stopped going, and we just started fading.
Hmm. I can understand that. It's this level of disrespect that they try to, I don't even know how to put it. They wrap it in this cloak of righteousness and it's for your own good. But once you see through all the layers that they put over it, it's still disrespect. It's still they did not, like you said, they didn't respect you as a parent. They didn't, and it's just kind of creepy and gross.
It is. It
I
really
mean,
was.
these are
I,
grown men.
I mean, even now, just thinking about it, my stomach just turns into knots because that's what it was. It was just so creepy and gross and wrong. And I just remember there thinking, in what world is this okay?
Yeah, really just weird. So there was no, say, doctrinal reason. It was, to use one of their terms, probably at the time, and the gossip I'm sure was going around the hall, they probably considered that you were stumbled. Would you agree with that term?
Yes, I would. I agree. My own sister tells people that I'm, spiritually weak and, that I never really tried or, that's the general consensus around here. I stopped going and it was, I must be just sad and depressed and, that it wasn't until recently that it became clear to people that I now don't attend because I have doctrinal reasons that I don't go. But back then,
Hmm.
they just all thought I was the poor, weak person who couldn't take the pressure.
Yeah, yeah. The grapevine is really kind of interesting in the congregations because they have to have a reason, and if they don't know what it is, they'll sort of make something up. The
Right.
reason that was put about by me was I was disgruntled because I never was appointed an elder. So that was why I stopped going. That the one last circuit overseer visit, I still wasn't appointed. It was the last straw, and then I stopped going to meetings. That's what people were saying, but that wasn't it at all. So,
But so it's kind of interesting because I considered myself a true believer all the way through all of that, but there was always things that I kind of questioned,
mhm,
but you kind of pushed it aside.
yes.
There was things that I was uncomfortable with, but I started to feel like um, everybody else seems to get this. Why don't I?
Hmm.
And you start feeling like, well, maybe I'm just not smart enough to understand this because it was always this is how it is. They give you the books that printed out black and white, and I would read it and just think, I don't get this. This isn't clicking. And I never understood why. And I left because for those reasons I stated, but I still considered myself a believer. I just couldn't understand why God's organization would allow these things to happen.
Hmm.
But
What was some
eventually,
of the big ones that that sort of bothered you that you can you think of any?
oh, like the headship arrangement,
Hmm.
just the fact, like dating in general was always just this really awkward thing where you're never allowed to be alone or um, I lived in an area where kids were never allowed to just be kids. They always had to be chaperoned. Boys and girls were not allowed to just be friends. Um,
Just really
it's kind of
dysfunctional.
hard to even
Yeah.
think about all the doctrinal reasons now
Hmm.
that I had issues with back then. But I mean, just even Bible storybook stories about everybody dying,
Yeah.
and we're supposed to be celebrating this. The fact that everybody I knew at school was supposed to be rotting bodies that we leave and we're supposed to be happy about this.
Yeah.
I just could never come to terms with the fact that everybody else in the world was a bad person just because they didn't want to knock on doors like us on every Saturday.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that you just accept, even though they make no sense, and even though you somewhere in your mind you know you don't agree with it or that it's wrong, but you tend to push it aside, like you said, and wait for Jehovah to clear it up if it is indeed wrong or whatever. So you left again,
Mhm.
and what's your current status? Are you still just faded, or has there been any sort of formal action from the congregation yet?
I believe I'm just faded. I know that I'm known as an apostate now. My daughter is known as an apostate now. We're pretty
Okay.
much avoided like we are.
Yeah, can you tell the story
disfellowship.
about how, I mean, I know how everybody knows, but not everybody listening might know how that got out to the public. What happened there? And that was just recently, right? Within the last year or so.
It's been within the last year. Well, my daughter has watched the family progressively cut us out of their lives. You know, the more they became to realize that I wasn't going to meetings, that I didn't want to have anything to do with it, they started having less association with me. At one point, I started dating a worldly guy, and my family found out and flipped out. I had a sister of mine call me and tell me she wasn't going to have anything to do with me because of that. And it was, how can you do this to your children? And you're basically condemning yourself and your children to death. And we were extremely close. So that was hard. So my Bree got to watch all of this that we were going through. And, um, she saw how hard it was. And it really affected her too to see that happening to me. So she was a senior in high school and she had to write a speech on a persuasive speech on something that she really believed in. And she asked me if she could write it on Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was all for it because at that point I had done a lot of research on the truth about the truth and
Hmm.
was coming to the realization that everything that I had believed to be true wasn't. And I was sharing with her what I was learning. So at that point, I wasn't sure exactly which route the speech was going to take. There was quite a bit of information in the news about the Candace Conti case. So I was sharing some of that information with her. And then I'm involved in a lot of online communities that are support groups for ex Jehovah's Witnesses. And so I started telling her about some of the people I've met through there and their stories that they shared of abuse, child abuse, or rape, and just the effect that um, the religion was having on them and how they were treated in those situations. So I contacted them and asked if my daughter could interview them, and they were happy to share. So Brianna interviewed them, and she wrote the speech and gave it in school. And I just asked her to record it so I could see it and share it with the people she had interviewed. Not We didn't have any intentions of it really going any further than that. And she gave her speech and she just did an amazing job, an emotional job. And we uploaded the speech within the groups to share it with people. And it just took off like wildfire and it went viral. I don't even know how far it went at this point.
Yeah, I remember when it happened. It was pretty awesome. So were you and Bree kind of surprised at some of the feedback you got?
We were surprised at the feedback we got. We got a lot of support and a lot of wonderful comments, and we also got a lot of hateful, angry replies.
Oh,
Which,
really? Yeah.
oh yeah, she even had a man track down her teacher at school and sent him this horrible email about how she's a liar and doesn't know what she's talking about, and it was we didn't look at it too much because it's the internet that's going to happen, but
Hmm.
it's just
Right.
amazing the anger that supposedly people of God can spew just for her sharing her truth.
Right. And she was giving experiences of people that she had talked to. So it's not like she was just making stuff up all on her own. This was, eyewitness
Correct.
accounts from other people too.
Exactly.
So,
These are all people, one of them I know personally and grew up with, and the other two I've talked to. Yes, we're internet friends, but we're Facebook friends. We share pictures of our children and we talk almost every day. These are real people who shared their real stories, and how quickly people discounted it was
yeah,
almost unbelievable.
yeah. But the support from the the ex-witness community was pretty cool to see, and to see
It
everybody who
was.
wanted to share it and send it on and pass it to other people. In fact, when this interview airs, I'll definitely post the link, and we can resurrect that
Right.
video again, have some people see it who haven't seen it yet.
It
So,
it was a wonderful experience, and it was also a very hard experience too, because when that video went viral, it got local, and suddenly all of our local friends and family saw it, and they knew it
mm,
was us right away. And from that minute on, we were shunned. We had elders trying to contact Bree and I. We, at this point, we have just chosen not to speak with them because
yeah.
they have no authority in our lives anymore. So they've I did hear a rumor that they planned on counting it as her or disassociating herself, but I haven't heard of any announcements being made for either of us.
Mm. And so, your family, you were raised as a witness. Do you have any non-witness family?
I do, but since I was raised pretty much completely separate, I don't know the rest of my family very well. You
Mm.
know, I have my parents and I had my three sisters, and we were very close knit, but didn't know my aunts and my uncles or my grandparents very well. You know, if I saw them in public, I would say hello, but we weren't very close just because we were raised
Yeah.
in our own little world. When you don't celebrate holidays with the rest of the family, it's kind of hard for them to get to know you because you're not at the gatherings that everybody gets together. But when this speech went viral, I did have some of my family that were never Jehovah's Witnesses see it and realize what was going on. So I have been able to reconnect with some uncles and aunts, and they've kind of welcomed us into their fold, and they plan on teaching us how to celebrate the holidays this year. So it kind of has been a blessing because we have gained family in the
Yeah.
experience also.
Yeah, I mean, that first reconnection with the normal family that was never witnesses, it's kind of awkward at first because you don't share a lot in common. You didn't share a lot of those bonding experiences growing up that a lot of people do with their cousins and things like that. But uh, it's worth it in the long run to to get out and to reconnect and make those connections. And you may not be as close necessarily as if you had known them your whole life, but you find that what the witnesses say about worldly people and how they're selfish or evil and hateful. It's just not true because you're welcomed into your family again. You're welcomed into a community outside of the witnesses, and you really get to see how unconditional love is supposed to work because it doesn't
Very
exist
true.
in the organization.
Very true. I grew up with that, being taught that everybody outside the organization is evil and they're out to get you and they're not true friends. And everything on the news was an example of what the world is really like. And then you get out there and you realize that, yes, there are bad people, but there are tons of wonderful people who, love you and care for you for exactly who you are. You don't have to pretend to be something you're not. And it is a wonderful, freeing experience.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. Now, you had mentioned when you went back the first time to the organization, it was for your daughter, and you left the second time when there was an event relating to your daughter. And knowing you on Facebook, it's really clear that you and Brianna have a really close relationship. And you mentioned also when you were younger, your parents took you out of school because they didn't want you to have access to associating with worldly people and dating worldly people and things like that. Um, but now your daughter, she doesn't have those hang-ups because you're a good mom. And so how are things going with her? She's off in school. She's in her first year of college. Is that right?
Yes, yes. She's in her first year of school and she's doing amazing. She's excelling in her schoolwork. She's making friends left and right, and it's it's a good feeling to see just what your kids can do when they're just free to be themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a picture you had posted a week or so ago with your younger daughter, and you had a hunting experience together. How'd that go? That looks super cool.
Yeah, I have a friend that is part of a hunting club. Her and her boyfriend both hunt, and I've never shot a gun in my entire life. And she invited us to do a learn to hunt experience. So myself and my son Levi and my daughter Maggie went pheasant hunting. And I learned how to shoot a gun, and between the three of us, we got four pheasants. And so
Wow.
it was a fun day. One of those things where it was fun to see that experience on my son's face that his mom actually learned to shoot a gun and got a bird. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Now, was
it's
that a
just
first time experience for both of them as well?
it was the first time for Maggie and Levi. Now that we're allowed to do things at school, he's part of the trap shooting club at school. So he has gone trap shooting, is familiar with a gun, but it was
Hmm.
his first time actually shooting a bird.
All right. And how was it? I mean, the taste.
It's good. It's a little drier than chicken, but very similar to chicken.
It's about the same size. They look bigger, but it's because they have these big feathers. So I can't really tell if they're turkey size or chicken size from
They're
pictures.
small. They're somewhere in between a small chicken and a Cornish hen
Oh,
size.
really? Okay.
Yeah. I fit two of them into one crock pot.
Okay. Okay. See, they look bigger. It must be the feathers. Um, so yeah, you and your family are doing normal things, and
Right.
instead of dragging your kids out in service on Saturday morning, or tonight you did dragged them to the Kingdom Hall, right? Thursday. And so you're living a normal life. Your kids are being raised with a normal life. Um, did Now, you've talked about Bree and how that went when you left. Did Levi and Maggie, did they have any problem leaving the Kingdom Hall, or were they all for it? Because the reason I ask is because my daughter was 10 the last time we went to a meeting, and when I told her we weren't going back, she was so excited. I mean, she misses her friends a little bit, but
Well,
how about your kids?
my
How did the adjustment go? And are they looking forward to the holidays? You mentioned the holidays this
Yeah,
year.
yeah. Well, my son claims he knew since he was 2 years old that it was crap, so he was happy that I
Mhm.
don't drag him to meetings
Mine
anymore.
says the
He
same
was more
thing. I
like,
knew
"What
all
took you so
along.
long, Mom?" Maggie, she was a lot younger, so it wasn't really a conversation with her. It was more like we just stopped going. And in the beginning, my family would try and ask my kids to go. And I never told my kids they couldn't. I just left it up to them. And the two older ones decided right away they weren't going. And Maggie would still go occasionally, but it was more about if she went to the meeting, they would get her candy, or maybe they would stop for ice cream on the way home.
Yeah.
So, and she has cousins her age too, so she would go with her cousins. But it got really old after a while, and now she doesn't even want to go. Um, Not this summer, but the last summer before that, my parents tried to ask her to go to the convention with them and tried to make it sound like it was a great experience. And at that point, they still babysat my daughter while I worked. And I came to pick her up, and they told me that they wanted to take Maggie to the convention and were asking me if it was okay. And I said I would talk to Maggie, and we left. And we get in the car, and Maggie's like, "Mom, I don't want to go."
Hmm.
She's like, "Don't tell him I don't want to go, but can you tell him I can't go?" And so it pretty quickly was a very good thing for all of us.
Well, I think the that kids have an intuition, and we probably did too, being raised in the organization. Just didn't have necessarily an opportunity to get out. But I think there's this intuition that something's not right. And when they finally get the opportunity to act on that and realize that there is a real world out there, that they tend to jump on it pretty quickly. Probably
Yeah.
they may adjust even quicker than we do. Lots
Yeah.
of times.
Well, and like especially with my son, things got really weird for him quickly because when um, my my ex-husband got disfellowshipped and we got divorced, he started having um, brothers in the congregation trying to step up and replace his dad,
Hmm.
which was inappropriate because his their dad was still there for them. I mean, we get along to for our children, and he was never out of their life. And I did have a lot of pressure that since he was disfellowshipped, that I should be cutting off that contact. And I never did that. That's not right. I'm like, that's their father. They need to respect their parents. And if they're ever going to shun him, that's going to be their decision when they're adults. I'm not going to make that decision for them.
Right.
So I kind of bumped heads with the congregation on that one. And um, Levi would have brothers coming up to him telling him, that, oh, the congregation is your dad now. So they pushed him out
Wow.
pretty quickly, just with comments like that.
It sounds like you have a really tough congregation.
And I did.
Yeah, it just really sounds very old school misogyny. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
women, like you weren't capable of raising your kids without your husband,
Oh, yeah. I had an elder outright tell me that he says, you can't do this by yourself. And
God.
for me, that was one of those, watch me.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
good. I mean, it sounds like you're in a good place now. Your family's in a good place. You're doing really well.
We are.
Um,
It's been amazing because honestly, knowing that that wasn't the truth and finally letting go of the guilt and the fear, we really have grown a lot in even just the last year, all of us. And it's just been a wonderful experience to finally figure out who we really are, honestly.
yeah. Yeah, because the cult, they even come right out and say it. They want you to put on the new personality, which is the personality that's molded by them in their organization. And I don't know if you've read any of Steve Hassan's books, but Combating Cult Mind Control is one of them, and Freedom of Mind is another. He talks about how cults create a personality that they can control. But then when you get out, it's an adjustment to find who you really are. And sometimes it takes a good amount of time. Sometimes it takes some people need actual professional therapy, but it's certainly you need a lot of support, and it sounds like you got that. What sort of support type books or websites, or even you can give shout out to people if you want, but what kind of helped you make the adjustment, and how did you come about to learn the truth about the truth other than your own experiences?
Well, honestly, I was part of a Facebook group for moms. And on this site, a woman made a post about selling her birthday for the first time ever. And she was talking about how she used to be Jehovah's Witness, and now she had left, and she's going celebrating her birthday. And it just struck me as amazing about how happy she seemed and how um, she it was like she had no guilt to just have left this religion and to be celebrating a birthday, which is, a pretty big deal.
Hmm.
And so I messaged her and I told her that I too had left. I was probably out about 2 years where I hadn't been to a meeting or anything for 2 years, but that it was still hard for me because um, I still kind of believed. And she started giving me websites. She's like, I don't want you to live like this. You don't have to live like this. And so she started telling me about Jehovah's Witness recovery.
Hmm.
And then she also said there was also Facebook groups. If you just Google ex Jehovah's Witness, a bunch of them will come up. Um, and that and JW survey. Um, I know there's more, but I just started looking at all of them, and it was just an eye-opening experience. That I know it's different for everyone, but for me, the biggest one was when I found out they joined the UN.
Hmm.
That one kind of floored me, and I ordered the book, Crisis of Conscience. I still haven't made it all the way through the book because it's very doctrinal, and I've kind of hit this point where anything religious kind of shuts my brain down because I've had a lifetime of it
Yeah.
shoved down my throat. But between all those websites, I was able to just realize this is not the truth. That
Yeah.
I don't need to feel guilty or that I'm doing something wrong by living my life. And
Exactly.
and then after that point, I started finding Facebook groups online, like the recovery group and the chat lounge, and to connect with people who were in the exact same place I was and felt the same way. And some people were just starting their recovery, some people were already recovered. And just to be able to socialize and joke around with people who really understand you when you grew up feeling alone.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really neat to see people who can get you, who actually understand what you're saying, and the whole kind of overtones, undertones, background around some of the things and experiences that we share online and in person and when we talk to one another. And I think another thing that stands out is when you're in the organization, you're a Jehovah's Witness, you may hear a disfellowshipping announcement once a year, once every couple of years, something like that. You don't get the impression that a lot of people leave. But when you get into the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, you realize, you know what? I mean, we don't count or post numbers like the witnesses do, but there may be more of us than there actually are in the organization.
I
There may be
was
more
just
people
gonna
who have
say
left.
that. It just, there's so many of them out there for so many different reasons and all over the world. It's just mind blowing when you thought you were alone and to and you find this huge group of people who completely accept you as who you are without judgment. It's amazing when you've gone your whole life being judged and not really showing people who you are as a person because they won't love you if they know who you are.
Right. And in the organization, you find that the only way you have something in common with certain people is because you happen to both be witnesses and be in the same congregation, but you still have to be friends with them because they're
Okay.
in your congregation. But when you're out in the real world, you can find people you actually really do have things in common with, and you can choose who to be friends with, who not to be friends with, and there's just freedom all the way around that you just don't get when you're in a enclosed cult-like community like the Jehovah's Witness organization.
Correct. Yeah. It is little baby steps, but they feel so huge, like you said, when you realize, you know what? I don't have to like this person.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care if they like me, or you just really connect with people that you have more than a similar background to connect with them and be friends.
Yeah, that's a big thing too. Is not worrying so much about when everybody doesn't like you because that's normal. People
Right.
in the world choose their friends based on personalities that kind of mesh with one another, based on common interests, and it's okay if everybody doesn't like you. You know,
Right.
and it's
And
okay if you don't like somebody else. You know, that doesn't mean you have to openly dislike somebody, but you don't have to you don't have to make yourself uncomfortable in life just for so you don't stumble somebody else.
correct. And another big one for me was just learning to stand up for myself because growing up a woman or
Hmm.
a girl to a woman in a congregation, you have no say. Nothing you say matters. Nobody listens to your opinion. So you kind of learn to be quiet and just take what people give you, and you leave and you realize, you know what? I do have a voice. I do have a say, and people will listen to me.
Hmm. And that's why It's such a gift that you've given to your kids by getting out and helping them get out of the organization because your girls, they're going to be free and not look down on themselves like you do when you're raised in a misogynist environment. And your son, he's going to respect women unlike witness men do. And so you've really given them a gift and yourself with this freedom. So it sounds like things are going really well for you and your family. And I just congratulate you for how awesome everything's gone for you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you for spending some time with me this evening and having this congregation. Um, like I had mentioned earlier, I will make sure to post up a link to Bree's video. And thank you very much, Angie.
All right, thank you.
Well, Angie, welcome. And that was Angie Radaj. And thank you, Angie, so much for joining us. She was amazing to talk to. And as you heard, an amazing mom, super strong woman. And it was really a pleasure to have you on the show tonight, Angie. So thanks. There was a little, as usual, glitch about 2 or 3 minutes ago, and I'm not even 100% sure I'm still even on the air. But I'm going to keep talking anyway because my computer icon that tells me I am on the internet is totally disappeared. And it did that at the same time as I got disconnected from the live stream. Anyway, as usual, I will fix the glitch before I post this thing to YouTube. Oh my gosh, I thought I was going to make it through a whole show without issues, but there's always an issue of some sort. I need a professional producer or something, I guess, because obviously I screw it up somehow each week. Anyway, thank you very much, Angie. That was an awesome interview, and there were so many really good points that you have in common with other people that have left the organization as well. That's what I love about every interview. We find unique and interesting and really cool stories, and we also find that we have so much in common with one another at the same time. So it, that was really cool. You mentioned during the interview about your daughter's speech at school and how that went viral. And it is now on YouTube and has been. And I didn't write down the exact number. You mentioned that you weren't sure how many views it has gotten. And it's been mirrored also by other people who have copied it and posted it to YouTube. So the number I'm about to give out is only on Bree's channel. And there's probably a lot more on other channels as well. But her particular channel, which is the link that's on the screen right now, with the exact name that's on the screen right now, if you wanted to look it up and watch it and listen to it, had over 600,000 views. I think it was 649,000 and something like that. And because Bree is so awesome and the speech was so cool in her high school, I'm going to play it here now on Cult Free Radio. And I won't repost it when I fix everything and post this show to YouTube because the link is here, and I'd rather have her page, her channel, get the hit and get the count. So if you wanted to listen to it again after tonight, you can go to the link that's on the screen, and if you want to hear Bree's speech that she gave to her high school class, stay tuned because here it is right now.
I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. Being raised as a witness, you see the world much differently than everyone else.
That was just a sneak peek of Bree Radaj's speech she gave at her high school for her senior class project. And so please go to the link that's posted on the screen and see the full speech on her channel. You can do that right now and come back and listen to the rest of the show, or you can listen to the rest and then go to Bree's link. That was Bree Radaj, Angie's daughter, and there's really not much I can add to that speech that she gave there at school. Just very brave of her. You can hear in her voice the just how good a heart she has, how much she cares about people, about the people she interviewed for the speech, and about the people who are both in and out of the religion, Jehovah's Witnesses, um, about her dad, her mom, her family. Just a really, really good, good kid, uh, who obviously, as you heard earlier this evening, has a really awesome mom as well. So thank you, Angie, for your interview this evening. Thank you for letting us into your family a little bit tonight, and allowing us to share some pictures of you and your girls, and your son as well. At least in the hunting picture, you got a picture of him. Um, so thank you for that, Angie, and best of luck to you and your family in the future. And of course, I will see you online. And to the Cult Free Radio audience, um, thank you for listening. Check out, please, Bree's speech. If you didn't get to hear all of it just now, it's on the screen again. And I will repeat briefly my announcement from the beginning of the show about the ex-Jehovah's Witness video captioning and subtitling group on Facebook. If you can type and you can hear and understand English, you can help. So the more people who are helping, the less work it'll take for everybody. So if you can join the group, sign up on Amara and volunteer, that would be awesome. And that's obviously no obligation, but if you can, that would be great. And I apologize again for the little glitch we had earlier. I don't think any of the speech was missing. I think we just went off the air and got back on the air. So hopefully the editing process won't take too long, and I'll have this show up on YouTube within a couple of days. Thanks for listening, and that is it for Cult Free Radio tonight. Have a good one.